into it. Put a fist up, prove it to us. This is much more than music to us. This is beauty and strife. And if you know about the music, then you know about life. This is movement music, move into it. Put a fist up, prove it to us. This is much more than music to us. This is beauty and strife. And if you know about the music, then you know about life.
Okay, thank you. And can we give a round of applause to all the adults, the educators that brought you down here, because when I was an undergrad, I shouldn't say undergrad, but when I was in high school, I just didn't have these opportunities. I didn't have high school teachers, administrators, educators that put me and my classmates in these positions, bringing us to college campuses to get that experience, to get a real feel. Because it's one thing for folks to tell you that you're college material or you're this kind of material, that kind of material, but until you're able to visualize and see yourself in that environment, in that atmosphere, it sometimes makes it a little bit more difficult to attain that goal. So you have to visualize, you have to be visionaries and see yourself at different steps along the way in terms of what goals you want to attain, college and being a professional and maybe going on to get your PhD or your JD or your MD or being the best darn high school teacher you can possibly be, because without excellent high school teachers and administrators like the ones that brought you down here, those folks that go on to become doctors and lawyers, teachers and business people, they don't get there without having that grounding, starting in elementary school, middle school, and high school, and so forth. So it's an honor to have you there. As he said, my name is Stono Rebellion, but I also, what I'm about to do, one of the classes I teach here on campus is a class that's geared towards seniors. It's a 400 level class. It's 498. It's a 400 level class. It means that most of the students that take my class are seniors, and once in a while I have a couple grad students that take the class as well. So the information, a lot of the information I'm going to be giving you today is some of the information that's in this particular class. So I teach a class called Critical Examination of Hip-Hop Culture and Society. And basically what I do is I use hip-hop culture, various aspects of hip-hop culture, as a point of departure to deconstruct everything from history. I take it all the way back to 3,500 BC in ancient Africa, going to Kemet, to Nubia, and I bring it all the way full circle to today, and looking at social issues that we're dealing with today, and the history that goes between that. So we cover the Black Power struggle, not just here in the United States, but in South Africa and different parts of the world. Anywhere you find African people who have struggled for their liberation against colonization, against chattel slavery, and connecting the dots. Okay? So that's what my class encompasses. And the first week, I get into hip-hop culture because a lot of the songs I use as a point of departure to get into a lot of the information, the critical information I get, that I cover in my class, is not being played to you. And it's not because of a lack of talent. We're going to get into this. It's not because of a lack of talent. It's because the narratives that are in that is in that music, it's not for you. They don't want you to think about these things. See, what I'm going to tell you right now, perhaps adults and educators and maybe your parents have told you this. So I'm going to, and if that's the case, bravo to them, because that's vastly important. And if that's the case, I'm going to reiterate a lot of perhaps what some of you may have heard, maybe in a different way, but it's going to be a reiteration of a lot of that information. And if it's not, if you haven't heard before, I want you to open your mind's eye and pay close attention, because I'm trying to tell you this. As many folks that you have around yourself, around here, that brother there, that sister right there, that brother right there, okay, myself, as many adults that you have around you right now that care about you, there are some people that don't have your best interest, that see you as a commodity. See you as a commodity. Whether it's a commodity that possibly might find their way into the prison industrial complex, maybe it's a commodity that just takes their money and spends it blindly and says, you know what, let's only have rap music on TV where the rappers are talking about buying sneakers after sneakers after sneakers and buying all kinds of material stuff, because when we put it on the TV, these dummies are going to watch it and they're going to want to go out and buy it, and they're going to spend money on our clients' products, right? Television stations or radio stations, they make their money off of advertising. the bulk of the money off of advertising. So Mr. Nike or Reebok or Adidas or whoever, they're not going to spend money on ad time for BET and MTV, which are all owned by the same corporation. BET, MTV, VH1, they're owned by Viacom, or this radio station that might be owned by Clear Channel. They're not going to spend their money on commercials and so forth if they don't feel that the consumers that listen to that radio station or watch that television station are apt to spend their money on the products. Okay? So we're going to deconstruct a lot of this stuff. So at the very least, out of this presentation, your critical thinking skills are going to be a little bit more honed, a little bit more sharpened. I'm going to give you some stuff to think about. And at the very most, you're going to get that as well as some aspects of history and some aspects of hip-hop culture that you've been carefully numbed down and to not know about this stuff. So without further ado, we're going to get it started. So we're short on time because I know the traffic here is horrendous. So I just want to kind of blow by things. So just a couple of people, folks. What does hip-hop mean to you? What does hip-hop mean to you? Anybody? What does hip-hop mean to you? In a word, in a sentence? My man right there. Music and culture. Good. I like that answer, especially the second one, because you're right. Anybody else? Right here. A message. Yep. A lot of messages. So I'll stop there and go to the next one. Hip-hop is a culture. Hip-hop is not a musical genre. It's a culture. Within hip-hop culture, there's a genre of rap music, the musical genre of rap music. And rap is an acronym. It means rhythm and poetry. All right? Rhythm and poetry. R for rhythm, A for and P for poetry. So the acronym is rhythm and poetry. That's what rap is. They don't tell you that. You're not supposed to know this. All right? And hip-hop has founding principles. The founding principles, when hip-hop was in its infancy, a guy by the name of Afrika Bambaataa, who's known as the godfather of hip-hop music. He's known as the godfather. And another guy named DJ Kool Herc is known as the father. But Afrika Bambaataa said that the founding principles of hip-hop are peace, love, unity, and having fun. Those four principles are pretty much nothing that you see when you turn on any of these mainstream corporate hip-hop stations or television stations. They don't even tell you that. If they gave a darn about the music and the people that created the music and the culture, which are black people like yourselves, blacks and Latinos, created and cultivated hip-hop music. All right? This is a black created medium that if they cared about you and cared about the history of that, they would tell you that. They would remind you. Hip-hop culture is peace, love, unity, and having fun. They can't do that because the rappers that they choose to play and put out there the acceptable versions of blackness and brownness they put on TV oftentimes have hyper-violent lyrics and themes. And so that doesn't really match up with peace, love, unity, and having fun. So I like that. I like both of your answers. This is what it means to me. This is what it means to me. I'm going to date myself, okay? Like I came onto the scene in terms of being a hip-hop fan, a rap music fan mainly, and then I got more involved into the culture as I went along, but it was the rap music that really pulled me in. But this is what it means to me. It means community, innovation, education. It means history, which is not even there, beats, fellowship. Met a lot of folks. I've seen hip-hop quell a lot of beefs in the community. As a matter of fact, the godfather of hip-hop culture, Afrika Bambaataa, he used hip-hop to quell gang violence in New York City. He used the aspect of breakdancing to bring rival gangs together and to settle their beefs through artistic expression. Okay? This is a known fact. All right, so hip-hop is all this stuff. Culture, resistance. As we get further through it, and make mental notes of this. As I said before, it's peace, love, unity, and having fun. The original 4 elements of hip-hop. B-boying, otherwise known as breakdancing, B-girling, because women were very much into breakdancing as well. DJing, rapping, otherwise known as MCing, graffiti art, okay? graffiti art, beatboxing. And here's a big one. You don't see BET, MTV, let's just say Viacom. You don't see, Hot 97 talking about this too much. Knowledge of self and community. That's one of the founding aspects of hip hop culture. Knowledge of self and community. That you had to know about who you were. You had to know about your community, because otherwise, if you're into hip hop, how can you use this tool? How can you use this tool to impact your community? Urban jargon, urban entrepreneurialism, urban fashion. All right, these are all different aspects of hip-hop culture. And then, as you see on the top, the founding principles. Stages and evolutions, early 1970s. And we look in the late 60s, that's when graffiti art came to the scene. Graffiti art started in Philadelphia, and it was disenfranchised youth. Just the same way when it spread up to New York. It was disenfranchised youth. They didn't go out just thinking, I'm going to go commit some crime. These were disenfranchised youth that were shut out of society, were never integrated in the so-called mainstream society. And so they were very much into art. We're talking about social programs like Little League, baseball clubs and things and music programs that were being cut because the economies in these cities like New York was being devastated. So they were cut left and right. Cut out left and right. And so a lot of these young people, they were very, very much into art and the arts in general. And so what they did is they would take to the streets, they would go to subways, and they would tag their name. And sometimes if there was a brother that was killed by the police or in a gang fight, they would draw an image of his face or a chalk outline. Sometimes if it was a police, they would draw a chalk outline with a police standing over him, and it would say, "Rest in peace, Jose Hernandez," or "Rest in peace, so-and-so." Okay? And this was a moving mural. It would go to the Bronx one part of the day. Next thing you know, it would be in Manhattan, it would be in Brooklyn, and the whole city. And so they're saying, now everyone knows my name, knows who I am. You can't, you can try to shut me out, but we're going to speak. So that's where it comes from. Okay? But we also should know that graffiti art was inspired by something called meta-netta. You've heard of hieroglyphics, right? All right, hieroglyphics. Where's hieroglyphics? Where do you think of hieroglyphics? Where's that? Hieroglyphics. Ancient Egypt, right? Ancient Egypt. Otherwise known as Kemet. And the original Egyptians, right, were called Kemetans, because Egypt is a Greek name. When the Greeks came in and they conquered, they changed the name. They called it Egypt, which is translated in a few different ways, but a couple of different translations is City of the Blacks or Land of the Blacks. Okay, so when you watch these TV shows and Night of the Museum, if you see somebody unearthed and being depicted as a mummy, and when they take the wrapping off, if they look any lighter than my man here, or him, or me, it's a falsity. Okay, the original Egyptians were very dark-skinned Africans because what? The Nile River, which you've heard of, flows from south to north, and they migrated from south to north, and they occupied what's now known as much of present-day Egypt. Okay, all right. They came from a place called Nubia, and they established that part of the world. So they would depict themselves on their wall. On the walls, there's hieroglyphics depicting exactly what they looked like. So they don't tell you this, but when you see these movies and they look like Brad Pitt or something like that, that is a falsity. This is not here to degrade or downgrade any race. I'm just putting out the history that you all, whether you're black or white in here, if somebody's lying to you about that, all right, it's an insult of your intelligence. Okay? Because if people from all around the world have contributed to world society, why is it that people with darker skin, why is it their history is oftentimes obfuscated? Why is it always, they try to confuse it, they try to confuse you, they try to suppress it? Why is that? If it doesn't matter, why did they go out of their way to depict you or these ancient Egyptians as something that they weren't? The golden era. So, meta-netta, all right? Meta-netta, that's what the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Kemetans, called it. And it's a translation, means word of the gods. All right, word of the gods. That's what hieroglyphics meant, and that's what it was called before it was renamed hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics is a Greek term. Okay? Golden era, there was heightened consciousness. That's where myself and other folks, and maybe my brother right there, and my brother right there, and my sister right there, maybe they remember this, being exposed to Public Enemy and Queen Latifah and X-Clan and Brand Nubian, Poor Righteous Teachers. We can go on and on and on, where MCs went out of their way. Even if they were known as a party MC, they needed to have at least one conscious rap song in their catalog. That was important. The culture dictated that. Okay, the culture dictated that. So even you would even see like so-called like gangster rappers like NWA coming, a little bit later on, when they, them putting out F the Police and Express Yourself. Google Express Yourself sometime. Google that video. Or YouTube, type in Express Yourself, NWA, and you'll see the video for that and what that video is about. So there was heightened consciousness. And so no secret that with the heightened consciousness in rap music, this very popular medium, that there was heightened youth activism. Doesn't mean there wasn't issues, but there was heightened youth activism. Okay? Where youth were now, if there was a drug problem that was rampant in their community, they were coming together and they were making songs about saying no to drugs and trying to bring rival factions together. Okay? So it wasn't like there was no issues, but there was a heightened consciousness, and definitely a heightened consciousness of yourself. Because I bet you, at least one of my comrades here, one of the older adults in this room, I bet you at least one of them had an African medallion. I'll start with myself, because I had one for sure. Exactly. See, you could buy it for $5, and we would wear it to school. No one could tell you. No one could tell me that there was something wrong with being black, or call myself a black man, or call myself an African. No one could tell me that. Are you kidding me? Because why? Because I was impressionable, just like other young folks, and I was seeing my favorite rappers talking about that. So I wanted to do that. So now we have the corporate-backed rap explosion, which happened in about 1995, 96, 97, where more and more corporations started to buy these independent labels. And what they said is, you know what? We did it with rock and roll. Yeah, let me tell you a little secret of this. Rock and roll, if you didn't know it, rock and roll was created by black folks. It was called rhythm and blues. And then they changed it. This guy by the name, listen, I'm going to give you the facts so you can go. I tell my students the same thing, because my students come in, a lot of this information is new. And I tell them, listen, I'm going to give you primary sources. Don't believe me. Go look it up yourself, please. If it's new information that you've never heard before, go look it up yourself. There was a guy by the name of Alan Freed and Pat Boone. And they said that music is a little too, the connotation is too black sounding. What we're going to do is going to take this guy Little Richard, and I'm going to redo his song. I'm going to do Tutti Frutti and songs like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cover the songs, but look, we got to change the name. It's called rock and roll. So rock and roll was created by a guy by the name of Chuck Berry, a black man, and it was called rhythm and blues, right? So these folks said, we did it with rock and roll. We could do it with this. So let's take it, let's change it, let's keep the name the same. But now we can create these cookie cutter molds, because we have a couple here. They're not the most popular, but we can make these guys popular. These cats that are talking about gang violence and talking about shoot 'em up, and this, that, and the other. They're in the minority of rappers out there, but we can make them popular by making sure that we sign them. And any other rappers that want to get down and get paid, tell them you are not going to get paid unless you sound just like him or them. Okay? True story. We've talked about that. We talked about the 60s and Philadelphia, Cornbread and Cool Earl. All right? Especially this cat, Cornbread, who's still alive today, who, is the founder of, you could say, the original element of hip-hop culture. We look at Kool Herc, who was Jamaican. He was from Jamaica, came to the Bronx, New York, and so so you nodding your head. So that's good that you know this. Came to the Bronx in 1967. and brought a lot of the different aspects that were endemic in music and in Jamaica, and he brought them here to the U.S., and he was able to do all four of the original elements of hip-hop well, so he's known as the father of hip-hop, the father of hip-hop culture, okay? And if you want to notice one thing, I just want to let you know this, the same thing with the adults that brought you down here. See, right now, I don't know what profession any of you guys are going to end up going into, but I see at every single table, I see kings. I see kings. And I see unlimited potential. And I'm not just saying that cliche-wise, okay? If I thought you were dummies, I'd be trying to dumb down my language. I would use something else other than endemic. If I say something, a word, a vocabulary word, because every vocabulary word that I know right now, there was a time I didn't know it. I didn't know it. Everything I know right now, there was a time I didn't know it. And so I had to ask or find out. So if I say a word that you don't know, raise your hand, ask me. Ask one of your elders. But the reason I'm saying it to you is because I refuse to dumb it down to kings. You don't dumb down information to kings and scholars. So I'm not going to dumb anything down to you. I'm going to give it to you the same way I give it to my college students. Because you're all college material. Whether you decide to go to college or not, that's your choice. But you're all college material. You have that mental prowess. So I talked about Afrika Bambaataa, who's the godfather of hip-hop. Kool Herc is the father of hip-hop. These are the gangs that he was involved in, and he took a trip to South Africa, and that's where he changed his name to Afrika Bambaataa, because he was so inspired. He went to Africa and he said, this is home. And so when he learned about African culture, various aspects of African culture, specifically Zulu and Xhosa and so forth, he decided that this is what he wanted his name to be, and he came back, and that's when he came back and he changed his ways and said, listen, I can use this hip-hop thing for good. I can use this. The griot. I like to connect the MC, the man or woman on the microphone, the man or woman on the microphone, the MC, to the griot. Griot, ancient African storyteller. Matter of fact, there are griots to this day in villages throughout Africa. All right, throughout that massive continent. And what that storyteller would do, they would pass down the history of the village. All right, so they were the conduit between the past to the present, taking that history from the past and giving it to the present. But also, if I had a beef, what's your name? Yeah.
Kelsey.
Kelsey. So Kelsey and I lived in the same village, and I had a beef with him and his family, and vice versa. It would be the griot that would get on a stump or get on a big rock, and they would speak in front of the entire village and explain both of our sides, and the village would come together to create a fair resolution between the two of us. Because in ancient African societies, there was no word for jail or prison. Okay? So when you hear that term, it takes a village to raise a child, it didn't just take a village to raise a child. It took a village to be involved in almost every major aspect of the vitality of that village. Black counterculture, you know about Malcolm X. You should know about, if you know about Malcolm X, you should know about Ella Baker. You know, one of the leaders of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. You should know about Stokely Carmichael, who ended up being Kwame Ture. All right, a lot of these names I learned about through hip-hop songs, being introduced by rappers that refused to dumb it down to me and the millions of youth that would listen to their music. So they would name drop. So the way rappers now have been programmed to name drop because the corporations tell them to name drop, Fendi and Louis and Gucci and this, that, and the other, they were name dropping actual names of historical figures. All right, so you know about the Black Power struggle, you know about the Civil Rights era, you know, Dr. King, and learn about the real Dr. King. Really sometime sit down and really study the last 3 or 4 years of Dr. King's life, because that's the version of Dr. King that mainstream society doesn't want any of you to know about. This man was outspoken. He was against imperialism. He was against war. He was against materialism and excessive spending and wants and needs. He was against poverty, viciously against poverty. He was against institutional racism, not just somebody calling you the N-word. He was against institutional racism, somebody saying you can't buy that house because you're black. or somebody going into your community and saying, I'm going to do a jump out, I'm going to profile you because you're black. He was against that, all that stuff. They don't want you to know that, but yeah. What were you going to say? Your question? Well, I don't know if you're into it. So the black counterculture created a framework for a lot of hip-hop pioneers to use what happened during the time when they were kids in the 60s and 70s to rap about. The folks like Chuck D and KRS-One. And we look at beatboxing. Just some more history for you. And I'm gonna start to fly through some other stuff so we can get done by 12:30, so the study abroad folks can tell you about what it means to why it's important to consider studying abroad once you get on a college campus. But when enslaved Africans, don't just say slaves, okay? Because there have been all kinds of slaves throughout human history. If you're referring to black people who were enslaved, say enslaved Africans. Enslaved Africans, that gives them identity, okay? They had an identity. If they got on that slave ship against their will, and they were brought here, and they were Africans when they left, then they must have been Africans when they got off, okay? But then they as you know, they were renamed. They were prevented from speaking their mother tongue, whether it was Mindi or Fulani or Shanti, what have you. Did anyone want to guess why? And then they were prevented from reading and writing. Anyone want to take a stab at why someone would prevent them from doing those things? Outside just...
They didn't want them to learn.
Okay, they didn't want them to learn. What didn't they want them to learn?
How to read and write so that they would be able to escape.
That's right. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. That's definitely part of it. The other part is that they didn't want them to learn about their culture, right? Who they were. Because if you're trying to do this, if you're saying we're going to do this for the next several hundred years, it's going to be miserable. I mean, I can use guns and I can use all kinds of weaponry to keep you enslaved for a long, long time. But it's going to mean a whole bunch of effort. But if I can conquer the minds of you and definitely your children, your progeny, your offspring, and where I can program them that this is what you are a slave, and that me, as a white man, I'm up here, and you're not even half human to me. If I can program you to believe that, then I can program you and domesticate you like a dog. Like a dog. Sit. Do that. Do that. And you won't even think about absconding or escaping. And even though there were a lot of slave revolts and a lot of escapes, and we think about Mama Moses, Harriet Tubman, and the great things that powerful sister did. All right? But there were a lot that were programmed, and reprogrammed not to know their true self. And that's one of the great things about like Malcolm X and folks like him, because he was trying to re-educate black folks about their rich history so that they knew who they were. Because once you know who you are, you may be walking like this, yes, master, but when you learn about yourself, you start to walk upright. You start to walk upright, and you start to look people dead in the eye. Dead in the eye. And they see right there, the eyes are the window of the soul. When you look somebody in their eye, they know that they have to carry a certain amount of respect to you. So that's why. So one of the things they took away was the drums. The drums are huge in Africa, endemic to the African continent. And when Africans would play the drums, there would be a connection between them and the ancestors, the spirits, who have long gone. Okay? So they took away these drums. They said, you cannot play drums anymore. You cannot play drums. We will not allow you to play drums or to practice any aspect of your culture. We're going to rename you. Your name might have been Kunta Kinte or this or Lumumba. Your name now is Johnny Smith or Robert Williams. These are not indigenous African names. Okay? They were renamed. And so what we're going to do is, as Africans, what Africans said is, you know what? We're going to, when they were put on the plantations, they started to replicate the sound of the drums by hitting their chest, by beating their chest. And men and women would oftentimes sing along. And then it made its way to the field. And you have these things called field hollers and jump ups. But this is where that comes from. And so I connected to beatboxing. But even before that, there was something in between that called ham bone. Ham bone, have you heard? Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. All right? These things came from innovations, ingenuity of African people, of black folks, creating something out of nothing to provide some type of escape or inspiration. And inspiration to a lot of things. Drums, there's something called the Stono Rebellion in the 1700s in South Carolina, where these Africans, these enslaved Africans, escaped. You know about it. You know about it. You can see it nod in your head. They escaped from their plantation. And they start, and they resisted violently against those that were enslaving them. And they were going to the next plantation, and freeing the other enslaved Africans on these plantations. And it was led by this one enslaved African by the name of Jimmy. And he started playing the drums, and there were others who would play the drums, and they would follow. And they were marching through the streets, and they were freeing their comrades, their brothers and sisters. I told you 1973 is the start of hip hop. DJ Kool Herc, he throws a birthday party for his sister, 1520 Sedgwick, in the Bronx, New York, South Bronx. He talks about African Bambaataa. We learned about him. Grand Wizard Theodore, he's the man that created the scratch. It was, it was fortuitous, meaning it was accidental. So fortuitous, it was accidental, and he was scratching in his room, and his mom said, "Turn that music down," and he took the headphones off his ears, and he inadvertently hit the turntable and made that shigga sound. He liked it so much that after his mom was done yelling at him, he went back and started to manipulate that. So he is the pioneer. He created that, by accident, that shigga sound. Who would have known that you can scratch the record and it's going to make this sound that sounds pretty funky? And so other folks like Grandmaster Flash took it to another level. And started doing things like the needle dropping the needle in different parts of the record and so forth. Mercedes ladies, brothers, women have played an enormous role in the cultivation of hip-hop culture. Women have played an enormous role. Hip-hop is not what it is without women, without the impact and the contributions of women. You have in 1976, you have the Mercedes ladies that paved the way for Salt and Pepper and other all-female hip-hop groups. In 1977, look at b-boying and breaking, b-girling, starting to become more and more prevalent. Look at Rocksteady Crew, and then the West Coast, the popping and locking, which is from the Sam Boogaloo and the Electric Boogaloos and so forth. 1977, the Electric Boogaloos performed on Soul Train with Michael Jackson. Matter of fact, a lot of those videos that you see of Michael Jackson, Beat It and Thriller, in the background a lot of them are breakdancers, b-boys and b-girls that were recruited to be in these videos because they were such great dancers. And Michael Jackson learned a lot of his moves from these breakdancers. Sylvia Robinson, she owned her own record label called Sugar Hill Records. Owned her own record label. Financed the making and producing of records with her own money. And there's a timeless classic called Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. You've heard of that? Everyone's probably heard of it. It's timeless. Timeless. Without her, that song doesn't come about. Okay? So she didn't have to rap, but she provided the environment and the funding for it to be possible. And then you have the message in 1982. The message in 1982 that Melly Mel and Duke Booty, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. You can thank her for that as well. Hip-hop started to become more mainstream in the 80s and so forth. We have, hip-hop starting to become a part of an aspect of Hollywood. Crush Groove, Breakin', Disorderlies. You look at Run DMC, LL Cool J, all this stuff has happened in 84, 85, 86. And then you have the era of consciousness, the golden era of hip-hop. Okay? You have Boogie Down Productions with KRS-One. You have Ice-T, you have Eric B. and Rakim, Public Enemy. If there's one album and one group that changed my life, that radicalized me and politicized me as a black man in this country, and that's that group right there, Public Enemy. Bar none. That album right there changed my life. Changed my life. Completely changed my life. To this day, that is a classic. To this day, I have a copy of it that has never been opened, because that's how much I think about that tape that I had. Now I have the CD. You have the Native Tongues. You have the whole black feminist movement. You know, Queen Latifah, Moni Love. You can go on and on. You have Tribe Called Quest. You have this collection of conscious artists, you know, comprised, you know, and made up the Native Tongues, the Jungle Brothers, De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest. And then you have, we talked about the name drop. All these names I've gotten from hip-hop songs throughout the years, going back to the late 80s. Angela Davis, Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells. Anybody in here want to be a journalist? Anyone want to be a journalist? Anyone like to write? Anyone just like liberation? This woman right here, Ida Barnett Wells. Woo! Charles Drew, MLK, Malcolm X. This is just a snapshot. Steve Biko from South Africa. These are some of the issues that were discussed in the golden era of hip-hop. Police brutality, right? We're talking about the Black Lives Matter movement right now. We're talking about that right now. This is something that has been going on for quite some time. And unfortunately, it's part of your fight too right now. And I really am upset about it, because who would have thought that police brutality, which is something that was rampant when I was your age, still continues to go on. And let's hope that this movement continues to pick up momentum, because there has to be a radical change in terms of the way policing is done in black and brown communities. A radical change. It's not about saying that the foolish thing that, oh, I know a good police officer. Yeah, there's good police officers and there's bad police, but you know what? It's a system that allows bad police officers to commit crimes against humanity and get away with it. The same crimes that if you were to commit it, you'd be in jail for quite some time or be facing, you know, death penalty charges. But they can get away with it on camera. On camera. So these are issues that have been discussed in hip-hop for quite some time. Rampant poverty, educational inequities. Okay? Why do we still live in a country that the number one financer of education has to do with not the government doling out equal amounts of money to all public schools, but why is it that if I live in a community that is full of apartment complexes, why am I getting less money from my schools than that community over there? Probably because they have property taxes. I mean, so all these things have been discussed. Apartheid in South Africa. All these things were addressed in hip-hop during the golden era. And then you have this quote down here from Martin Luther King. I just want to put this out here. Obviously, he was not alive during the golden era of hip-hop, but I just thought it's so important. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. And I want to tell you this right now, really quickly. I look to every single one of you in more ways than I do even my own counterparts to do the right thing in the future. Because some folks my own age, they look past this stuff. They look past the history, they know the history, and then they get miffed up by politics and they get caught up with who's Democrat and who's Republican in terms of somebody's doing bad, you're doing bad. I don't care what you look like. As Malcolm said, I'm against injustice no matter what it looks like. So you remember that. Because as long as this country continues, Democrats and Republicans continue to spend $1 trillion on military, and then turn around and spend $77 billion on education for the entire country, there is something wrong. You will be going to college soon. I will let you know. Your counterparts in countries like Norway, Sweden, even Venezuela, Germany, Switzerland, they go to college for free. For free. Don't want to go that far? Go to Canada. They're paying $1,000 a year to go to quality colleges and universities. Where here, the average college student now is graduating with $33,500 in debt. There is $1.5 trillion of student loan debt floating out there right now in this country. That's the next big bubble that will burst. It was the housing market in 2007. It's the student loans that's going to be coming next. We have to continue to fight for that. You shouldn't be paying any money to go to state school. It should be something that your country is investing in you. You make the grades, then you should be subsidized. State schools should be subsidized. So, this is the kind of lyrics that we got. My forefather was a king. He wore fat gold chains and fat ruby rings. Nobody believes this to be true. Maybe it's because my eyes ain't blue. You're not going to get this from your history book. Come here, young blood, let's take a look. They're talking about, this is 1989, and they're telling, the youth are talking about this in hip-hop songs, saying, our history is not reflected. There's no balance of history in other history books. Where's the Native American history? Where's the African history? Where's the black history? And I'm going to tell you something unpopular. I'm going to tell you something really unpopular right now, but it's true. So, they won't give you that other history. They don't give you a balance of history, right? They won't give you a balance of women who have done amazing things, Native Americans and their struggle and their plight as it continues to go on. Our struggle, our plight, our successes, major successes. The fact that people from all over the world used to come and study. Among the first universities on the planet were in the great continent of Africa. University of St. Croix in Timbuktu, Luxor, Karnak. We can go on and on. They don't tell you this. Hundreds. But before that, you weren't even white or black. Oh, you were Zulu, you were Xhosa, you were Greek, you were Roman, you were German. They weren't even referring to themselves as white. Okay? So it was no big thing to go study from a bunch of dark-skinned black Africans and learn about history and philosophy and how to smelt iron ore. But here's the thing I want you to know. Something that's very, very unpopular, besides me knocking that over. Something very, very unpopular. They won't tell you any of that. But they will tell you that George Washington's your founding father. Oh, what do I have against George Washington? Well, you know what I have against George Washington? As I said before, if you're doing things that are unjust, I'm not celebrating you. Period. Period. Well, George Washington happened to be a devout, proud slave owner. He owned 317 African slaves. 317. So you want to call somebody your founding father, that's fine, that's your business. But understand this, that if we put you in a time machine, with a hot tub time machine, and put you back into, the time where he was alive, anywhere near his plantation, they're going to snatch you up and you're going to work till you die on his plantation. So I'm not celebrating anybody that does that. Nor am I celebrating Columbus, who killed millions and millions of people. Not doing that stuff, man. Not doing that stuff. Okay? I'm not doing that stuff. But there's people that you can be celebrated. What about William Lloyd Garrison around those times, who was against the institution of slavery? Thomas Paine, against the institution of slavery. Spoke out loud against it. What about Frederick Douglass? What about all these folks? Okay? Those are the folks you need to be celebrating. Because if you're going to celebrate people that did bad things, it's going to somehow rub off on you in some shape, form, or fashion. Make it a note to learn about your history. So these are issues that are discussed today in rap music, but they don't play it. They don't play it on the radio. They don't play it because they don't want you to think. They don't want you, dare I say, to turn out like somebody like me, who was inspired by that kind of music, that now, years and years and years later, is now using that music as a vessel to talk to you about the truth and to talk to you about the dawn of a new day and to visualize it and to be visionary, to see not just a new United States of America, but a new world. Almost done. Carter G. Woodson, we're in Black History Month right now. If you didn't know, Carter G. Woodson is the founder of Black History Month. Started off as Negro History Week in 1926, became Black History Month in 1976. He wrote a great, great book that maybe you have read, and maybe you haven't. But I don't want you, even if you read it, I don't want you to read it. I want you to get that book and study it. Study books. Don't just read them. Study them. Because in that book, it's very, very relevant to a lot of things going on today. But this quote is from that book. He says, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. He goes on to say, you can tell him to make a door in that wall. and he'll run through that wall. Meaning that you could be 7 feet tall. 7 feet tall. And if they control your mind, this little tiny person could be 2'1". And if they can control your mind, they can control your mind. They can tell you exactly what to do, and you won't realize your true power. All right. So I'm sure that I'm going to get to the end. Bear with me, folks. I'm going to spend a minute on the last 4 slides. Folks that are waiting, this is important information. These images, really quickly, are very racist images. I see my sister nodding her head. She knows very, very much. This is what we've been taught years and years ago, that this is the stuff that happened back in early 1900s and even towards the mid-1900s. I mean, these were images that were used to depict black people. When they couldn't find a black person, they would get a white person like Al Jolson, and he would put black face and then get up and then act, like they wanted to depict black people to act. Okay? So these were images that are around. These should be seen as very, very racist. Very racist, right? At the same time, you had folks, some of the folks that are on this collage right here, they're alive. But they weren't used to sell products. Why? Because if you use any of these people to sell products, then you're going to let the secret out of the bag that black people are not what you're trying to depict them as. You're like W.E.B. Du Bois, first African-American to receive a PhD from Harvard University, a wonderful, wonderful Pan-African. You have Bessie Smith, Ida B. Wells right over there. A. Philip Randolph, Marcus Messiah Garvey. So they didn't want the true images of these people to be popularized. But now we look at today. If we saw these images back then, you tell me. Volunteer, anybody. Old heads like me, anybody. Tell me what's different from these images to these. The only reason you don't see these as blatantly racist is because they've been popularized. They've been popularized and they've been invaded into your mind and your subconscious, where you see them as entertainment. You see that as entertainment. These are the acceptable versions of blackness they want out there. This is the acceptable version of black men and women that they want out there. If you don't know your history, anyone can tell you who they want you to be. So you have these songs. Trinidad James, popular song. I just want to give you an idea about the popularization. When this song came out, this song was played 1,810 times on radio stations across the country as an aggregate, a total number. That amounted for, that meant that when they took all the different data in different markets, it means that in that 1 week, over 9 million people heard that song. And you see, this is what look at the lyrics. It's indecipherable. You guys are all scholars. So this should be like reading, you might need your Batman decoder ring to get this out. This is beneath you. This is beneath you. But this is what they put out there. You see it? You know the song Trinidad, all gold, everything. You know the song? But these are the images that they don't want you to see. Yeah, there's a couple of images from yesteryear, like Queen Latifah. But these are images of MCs right today. Dead Prez, Dark Sunrise, Acrobatic from Boston, Mortal Technique. They don't want you to hear their lyrics. Remember the names and go into YouTube and Google Dead Prez. See what they have to say. And you'll see that they're amazingly talented. But on top of being talented MCs, look at the content. Listen to the content, what they're talking about. They mobilized the marches of the movement and imprisoned many people. Now they monitor the music, making martyrs out of you and me. The emblem is a panther, not a pimp. And my woman is an empress. Think about it. He's saying my woman is an empress. Not a slut or a hoe that you just saw on the previous page with all gold everything, that they had this black man talking about black women. That's what she is. This guy's saying is an empress. If you ever get a glimpse, my impression of a Moran is an empty-minded man. And we go, and we keep to go, and then you have the next lyric from them. I live, I die, I organize. Everything I do, I revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood. I study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton, and Marcus Garvey. I ain't hating, I'm just saying, if you want to be a rapper, study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Please Google that song. You'll get the video, and then you'll get the point, and you'll understand if they made this song popular, it would revolutionize the way black boys and brown boys and black girls and brown girls saw themselves. And matter of fact, it would have white boys and white girls seeing the truth as well. It would also do something for them as well. And as we end, because this is the very last slide, and I end on this. And I just want you to understand, because there's a couple of slides that I went over. I want you to understand, because it may not register, but 0.6% of all television stations in this country are owned by black people. If you take every person that identifies with being of color in this country, 3.4% of all TV stations are owned by people of color. The rest owned by white. Radio stations, 3.4% of all radio stations are owned by black people. 7% of all radio stations are owned by people of color. So we're not making the decisions. We're not making the decisions in terms of what's being played and so forth. But you can make a change. You can make a change. Even if you say, I still like such and such. That's fine. If you want to watch those videos. But don't let it become who you are. You deconstruct that image. The same way if you went on a health kick, and you started eating healthy food for an entire year, the next time you had that poison at McDonald's, you would probably throw it up. If you start to feed your mind with powerful stuff that tells you who you are, and if you're white, information that tells you that you're a human being and that people that are black and brown are no different than you and they should be treated with the same amount of respect. If you start to take that kind of information in on a daily basis, after a while, when you see those images, they won't ever become a part of you. You will look at them and say, that ain't me. That's comedy, that's not me. That's not me at all. And I will not emulate or act out anything I see on that. Matter of fact, I will tell those around me, my little brother, my little sister, the people in my community, I will tell them, that's not you. Don't act like that. That's not you. And you'll take pictures of the people that you learned about, the Malcolm X's, the Ella Bakers, and you'll show them pictures. Look at this sister, man. She was a strong sister. Look at this, what she did. This is what this brother did. This is what Charles Drew did. Created a blood bank that has saved millions of people. And you'll spread that information. And you don't have to have no PhD to be a professor in your community. You can start to spread information. Malcolm didn't have no PhD. He was self-taught. Now, I'm not against education. I'm saying you don't have to wait to be an educator in your community and to make an impact in all the youth in Piscataway and beyond. It starts with you. Young brothers, young sisters, because I call my sister right there a young sister, as well as you right there. Everyone in this room, no matter what the hue of your skin is, okay? Because we understand race is a social construct. Culture is real. Culture is very real. Race is a social construct. No matter who you are, from this moment on, if you haven't been doing so, when you leave these doors today, you make that decision. I am going to change this world, because you either build or you destroy. So you be a part of it, your legacy. That one day when you, 100 years from now, when you make your transition to ancestors, you want people to say, this is what this brother did. This is what he did. Because if it's just about you owning 19 cars and 40 big houses, people are going to forget that. But you've changed people's lives. It's over. I thank you for your attention. Change the world. Start with yourself. You are kings. You are kings. Every single last one of you. You walk with your head up and don't forget it. It's not cliche. You are kings and you are scholars. And I promise you, I mean those words. But you have to believe them and you have to act it out. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Move into it, put a fist up, prove it to us. This is much more than music to us. This is beauty and strife. And if you know about the music, then you know about life. This is movement music, move into it, put a fist up, prove it to us. This is much more than music to us. This is beauty and strife. And if you know about the music, then you know about life.